Okay, so we've got the victim triangle, the drama triangle. What's the no drama triangle? So there's been various versions of this. The drama-free, are you drama-free? What's the drama-free triangle? There's a couple of versions. I came across one by Troy, by Emerald. I invented one years ago myself, but it didn't make it famous. These are two guys who somehow got associated with this. They got slightly different versions. So the victim, I quite like the vulnerable for the victim, right? On an emotional level, but if we take responsibility, the victim becomes the creative. It's like the agent, we could say the agentic, the responsible one, the one who's actually able to say, you know what, I've got a part in this. In Alcoholics Anonymous, they say, what's your part in it? And sometimes it's like, no, someone just attacked me in the street for no reason, right? But more often than not, when I've sat down with people, they're like, well, I did do something kind of dumb first, and I antagonized him, and yeah, he hit me, that's not okay, but I was doing some stupid, So usually there's some part in it. Yeah, and then once you admit that, and it's like, okay, what's my responsibility? You can then be creative, you can be agentic. I'd say leader would be another way of saying this. When I teach leadership, this is like 101. And we all do this. The classic when someone's late is like this. I use this as an example because in training, nearly always someone's late, me included sometimes, and it's like, what happened? Yeah, and normally, once someone said to me in Russia, they were late, and they said, oh, I'm terribly sorry, I'm late, it snowed. And I said, okay, it's January, this is Russia, are you Napoleon? Did you not expect that? And everyone went, oh, it's funny because he died in the snow. but it's if you don't know, the Napoleonic armies kind of underestimated the Russian winter. But it was interesting because it's like, what did you expect? Of course there's snow, right? You need to factor that in. Or someone in LA says, oh, there's traffic. There's always traffic, right? You've got to factor that in, right? But it's really hard to say, you know why I'm late? It's because I made laying in bed more important than coming to this meeting. Or, I didn't actually care about you enough to give it a bit of extra time. Or, you know what, I didn't want to be early, so, I didn't want to be uncomfortable at the party being the first one there. So, I just kind of let other people be uncomfortable because I didn't want to be uncomfortable. Like, that's the fucking truth, right? There's one men's organization. Whenever you're late, they say, what did you make more important than being on time? And it's brutal. It's brutal, but it's real. And actually, we get this intuitively. I remember saying to my niece once, I said, oh, I'm sorry I don't visit you very often, but I live across the country and it's a really long way, which is true, right? It's a long way and it's expensive on the trains in England. And she looked at me and went, yeah, but if you love me, you'd come more often. I was like, like she sort of, there's a bit of blackmail there, whatever, but she really got that there's no excuse, that I was making a choice. I was making my own money and time and ease more important than seeing my niece and nephew, right? Like more regularly. And it's not saying there's not factors. It is a factor, there's snow or traffic or £200 train fees in the UK or whatever it is. They are real factors, but I still made a choice. So this is all about choice, I would say, when we become into the leadership position. So there's two ways of looking at it, right? This is like acknowledging the positive side of being a victim. There's a vulnerability there, right? But, life does do to us. But this is the leader position, is going, okay, when you step out of it. So that's why I've included both models. From this position, a lot of you are coaches, right? So the rescuer becomes the coach. So what's the difference? The coach is boundary. They have time limits. Yeah, it really annoyed me. One of my students this year said, oh yeah, I coached someone for like an hour and a half because they just kept wanting coaching. And I was like, no, don't do that. You have a time limit, right? You have boundaries. Okay, equally, a coach looks at someone as capable of solving their own problems. So that's the basic humanistic frame of coaching, which is like, I trust that you can find your own solutions. I think we could take that too far, but the basic position, I think, is respectful. It's adult, it's not one up. It's like, I'm here to help you, yes, but, there's professional limits, and also my needs matter. So, for example, today, if I was sick, I would ask Ranko to teach or Ava to teach, because it's not just, rescuing you, giving, it's like, I want to give to you. This isn't about me, narcissism, right? I still want to give to you, but from a sense of like, yeah, no, my needs are important. I have my breakfast, and if I'm ill, I take time off, yeah. Makes sense? Different embodiment as well, right? Helping versus, hey, offering. It feels different to people. Yeah, less patronizing. Obviously, this one, taking responsibility is different than the collapse of being a victim. In terms of embodiment terms, it's like vulnerability has a softness, but not a collapse. And that leader position has a spine, an uprightness, and extension. It's not making yourself small or collapsing. So when you're in that, this is why, politicians are so big on body language. They're essentially pretending to embody leadership. And it kind of looks like bullshit because they don't do it very well. But, when you see a leader who's got that upright embodiment, it doesn't have to be super macho, military leader on a tank, the classic example, you know, hey, troops. But it doesn't have to be so macho, but there's some sense of uprightness. Yeah. I think there's more kind of feminine versions of that, but none of them are collapsed. Yeah. Okay, the last one. I think this is the hardest one for people to see the positive in. Yeah, and my whole life I've kind of had issues with this in that I go into the position of persecutor, but there's a really positive side to that, which is the challenger. Yeah, and sometimes you see coaches who maybe overdo this. It's like the men's world coach. You got to step up. If you're not making money, it's because you're weak. You got to step up. Everyone can make money. If you're ill, it's because you don't look after your health. It's like, well, some people just get ill. Yeah, so we could overdo this, but I think there's a really positive, and most coaches underdo this. Okay, most coaches do not challenge enough. They're complicit. Yeah, they're way too yin, way too water, to use our different models we use. Okay, so I think I'm an exception in some ways. Rare as coaches that challenge a lot. Like I challenge people here. Well, maybe that's why one of our participants left. I don't know. You know, it may have been that I over-challenged, or people don't receive a challenge. Yeah, but I think this is important for us as coaches to be able to challenge, to be assertive would be another way of saying it. This is more like the emotional level, the green one from Choi. So that's like we can be assertive, we can stand up for ourselves, we can challenge other people, we can say this is not okay. Yeah, we can say I would like to see change in the world. Like you can do better than this. Yeah, because this idea that care is just looking after or allowing or accepting. It's like, no, care is also, this is bullshit. This is not okay. Hey, you've been drinking too much. You need to stop. You know, I wish that I used to be alcoholic, and people very rarely challenge me. Like very rarely. And I thought, actually looking back on it, it's like partly that's on me, right? I would have denied or pushed it away. But there was definitely some years where I would have been open to it, right? There was a point where I went, you know what, I think I got a problem here. I wasn't in total denial. I could see it was causing issues in my life, health issues, and, you know, meaning I wasn't living such a good life, getting drunk every night, you know, it was impacting me, you know. And I would have been much more open to people saying, hey, Mark, like I really care about you and you've got to stop drinking. Oh, yeah, you know, maybe I would have said, I said, no, you have to fucking stop drinking, right? I remember there's one guy at university I lived with who did do that, and I cut down my drinking, you know, because he was like, dude, he called me a wretch. It's quite a strong word. You know, he's like, you're a fucking wretch. You need to cut down on your drinking. You're going to fail your university course. I was like, Darren, his name's Darren, if you're out there, Dazza. And I was like, yeah, he's right. You know, that was the kind of thing he could have done. Yeah, not like, oh, tell me why you drink. Is it your trauma? You know, like, it's like I just needed a guy to come in and say, this is bullshit. Yeah, so it's super helpful. Okay, so this is the positive side. Remember, there's a different embodiment to each of them. Assertive isn't like, rah, there's some yang, some energy to it, but it's still centered. Does it make sense? Yeah. So we could do distinction coaching with each of these and our past ones. So what's the difference between being vulnerable and collapsed? What's the difference between being caring and being, you know, over-caring, being rescuer? And what's the difference between being challenging and assertive? If you find that in the body, then you're more clear which you're in. So for me, I know when I'm in the positive assertive mode, when I'm more on center and my eyes aren't tight and I'm not aggressive, like off-center aggressive. Yeah, with the caring mode, it might be like you're offering rather than off-balance, having to give. Okay, and when you're in the vulnerability mode, it might not be total collapse, but there might be like a sensitivity or a rawness, kind of some feeling of like, you know, I do want to be in my own space a little bit and a bit sensitive, but it's not like, oh. Cool, makes sense? Often people don't talk about the positives and think it's important, or else we're just left with like all the problems and not what do I do instead? Yeah.